Welcome to Biztech's Ambassador Conversation Show. Today, our conversation is with Rwanda's High Commissioner to Singapore, His Excellency Dieu Uwihanganye. Now, welcome to the show, Your Excellency.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me.
Now, Your Excellency, can you start by giving us an overview of Rwanda and its difficult past?
Well, Rwanda, first of all, I think every time we talk about Rwanda in this part of the world, in Southeast Asia, we always need to start describing it by its geographical location. It's a country in East Central Africa. Its population is around 13 million now. And we're a country with good intention, good vision going forward. It does have, yes, a difficult past. It can be traced back into the legacy of the colonial era. So back then, the social classes turned into ethnic groups in line with the divide and rule strategy of many colonial masters, which I'm sure many in this part of the region experienced as well. But Rwanda's quest for independence came with violence that saw part of Rwandans fleeing in the country, mainly neighboring countries to Rwanda. That means DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, which was called Zaire by then, Burundi, Tanzania, Uganda, and so on. Rwandan leadership by that time, after the independence, was mostly guided by ethnic and regional quota in all sectors of life. You know, you wouldn't have everyone go to school. They will be divided in there will be quotas about who goes to school, who doesn't go to school. It doesn't matter whether you pass the exams or not. But if you look at all Rwandans, in fact, we're all the same. We look the same. We speak the same language. So it was that divide and rule, the spirit and mentality, which continued to drive the country even after the independence. So, but this ethnic-based policy did polarize the Rwandan population and exacerbate the tensions left by colonialism. I can't go to that shortly, but long story short, this culminated in 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. But then, well, Rwanda is a born-again country. It was resurrected from ashes in 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, with all its consequences, which we definitely still deal with, but we'll have to continue to deal with for the generation to come. But then, since then, Rwanda has made tremendous development in all sectors of life. And we are now a proud nation with an ambitious vision to take Rwanda to high levels, to build a united and developed Rwanda. We are building a country free of ethnic divisions, free of hunger, whereby every child now has access to education and every Rwandans have access to healthcare. We are landlocked, but not landlicked. That's an important mention to say, because that we are landlocked, but we are landlinked. So with the current global state of affairs, Rwanda is aiming for global market. We are the first country in the world to adopt the open borders to the world. Every citizen from around the world can travel to Rwanda and get a 30 single entry visa upon arrival without pre-applications. Rwanda is a safe country to live in, and it's a reliable partner bilaterally, multilaterally. So that's how I can briefly talk about Rwanda.
Okay, because there's so little understanding in this region about Rwanda, can you just share with us how Paul Kagame, your president, transformed Rwanda when he came to power? What were some of the key things that he did to transform Rwanda? Walk us through that transformation journey and the key milestones in that journey.
To understand it, I could resume it into just three important choices, which he guided the country through it. So His Excellency, the President of the Republic, asked the Rwandans to join him, and we made three choices. And that's the three choices which helped Rwanda rise from the deadly pit of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, and the progress from almost those who said we were a failed state to a modern country now. So these three choices are: one, to be together, which means uniting our people and no more discrimination. Two, to be accountable, which is very important. Here we're talking about no corruption and making sure that everything we do is made accountable so the people, the citizens can make us accountable.
And that's been a key cornerstone, right, Your Excellency?
Because
corruption and removal of corruption has been just the cornerstone and a beacon compared to a lot of countries in the region.
Because Rwanda recent, and it's been topping the list of Transparency International corruption index as the least corrupt country in Africa for so long now. That's part of this choice of to be accountable. And there's a choice number 3, which is to think big. So we are a landlocked small country, but we had to think big. By thinking big here, we means that ambitious targets to make Rwanda a developed country. So these are 3 choices which the president, with Rwandans through those led through the country. So, but then of course there are bilateral or multilateral partnership. Rwanda was accompanied this journey by a number of countries in various forms. There are many, most part of the country, in almost all the parts of the world, we've had partnership with a number of the countries, including those in Asia. So they will also support with multilateral institutions, IMF, World Bank. And all of those have been able to help together with the Rwandans and what we call the homegrown solutions that have helped to make important and structural reform and sustain its economic growth rate over the last decade. So Rwanda is now known for what we call the effective and successful use of the foreign aid. So it has allowed Rwanda to grow from 80% aid dependence in 2000, when the President of Republic now went to power, to 40% dependence now, because now we can mobilize 40% of the budget inside locally in the country. So the aim is to reach a zero dependence aid in near future. So in fact, these are the key principles and the key choices through which the president led the country, and the Rwandans joined him. Of course, there are milestones, key milestone. The first important milestone is that we dedicated, we agreed to have what we call the Vision 2020, which is a vision which was supposed to last for 20 years, and it has different lines and different targets to achieve, and most of them were achieved. Now from 2020 to 2050, we have another vision, which is 2050. So I would say that at a strategic level, these are the key ambitions we had, and most of them are achieved.
Okay, now walk us through today now. What are the key sectors and engines of growth for the Rwandan economy?
Let's talk about the economy today first. Prior to COVID, so before COVID-19, before 2020, of course, COVID-19 has affected all the economies worldwide. But prior to that, Rwanda had registered a stable growth of an average 80% for the last decade. In fact, in 2019, the growth, the GDP growth was 12%. So the Vision 2020 launched by the president in 2000 was a big game changer in the socio-economic transformation in Rwanda. So, and I talked about it. I talked about its main objective, which was to transform the country into a knowledge-based middle-income country, and thereby reducing poverty, health problems, and making the nation united and democratic. So Rwanda economy today is a result of effort to put together to achieve that Vision 2020 objective I said. It is estimated, if I look at the 2017 benchmark, that the annual GDP in 2019, like I said, it increased by 10 to 12%. The main sector, of course, main sectors are going to be agriculture sector in 2019, which contributed to 24%, industry, which contributed to 18%, services contributed to 49%, while the remainder, 90%, was attributed to net tax on products. So then the growth, of course, is on that level as well, agriculture growing at 5%, industry at 16%, and then services at 8%. So in 2000, agriculture was, of course, the first sector contributing to the Rwandan GDP. So that's almost like $2 billion USD with 46%. So of course, Rwanda is now seeking to extend its range of partnership with Global Financial Center to accelerate its development as an African hub. We're talking here about what we call the Kigali International Financial Center. We're trying to develop the country as a new service hub, as a new trade and a financial hub. Obviously, COVID-19 has hit hard the economy. The growth has been reduced, but the economy is now showing sign of recovery. In fact, the last quarter, the data showed in last quarter showed that the economy is slowly recovering. And we have high hopes as we've been able to manage COVID-19 quite efficiently.
Ambassador, I want to ask you, that idea of growing, positioning Rwanda as a financial hub in Africa is a good idea, but what are your advantages? What makes you the country that foreigners would pick to be the financial hub compared to, say, the traditional financial hubs like South Africa?
Well, number one, it's, the kind of reputation we talk about the country Rwanda has, it is true. Everyone who comes to Rwanda knows it is true. Why would you pick Rwanda? It is a stable and safe country. So Rwanda is the safest country in Africa. It's been ranked, its leadership, the government has been ranked as the most efficient government in Africa as well for so much time. So you would want to put money in a stable country, in a safe country with security, but with a government and the private sector and with a way of doing which is more efficient than any other. Obviously, yes, we have incentives about people setting up funds, incentives about setting up headquarters of companies. But these three key elements I just talked about, I think will give us a competitive advantage. So you're bringing your money, you're bringing your company, you're bringing the people and everything to do with the financial hub in a country which is stable, which is safe, which is efficient in Africa. And this is agreed, it's commonly agreed. So I think this is what we are trying to exploit by putting up an international financial center in Rwanda, and the progress which has been made so far, it's good and considerable.
Now, your president has branded Rwanda as the Singapore of Africa. So obviously this plays nicely into that theme. How did Singapore inspire him?
Well, I would rather say that it is very important because he doesn't say that Rwanda is a Singapore of Africa. He rather tells Rwandans that, yes, we can make it as Singapore did. The same way he does tell to others. I mean, because obviously there's a difference in terms of context between Singapore and Rwanda. There are many, right? But rather other people are the ones branding Rwanda as a Singapore of Africa. We'll be happy about it. Of course, there are many similarities, but there are differences as well. But the idea of saying that we can make it is that we know that Singapore was, in the last 50 years, where Rwanda is today. Singapore has made tremendous progress and created conducive environment that allowed the miraculous development we see today to happen. And that required a set of environment, condition, behavior, and corrective sacrifice by Singaporean to be able to be where the country is today. So what the president is saying is that he seeks Rwandans' contribution to make Rwanda develop. President Kagame wants every Rwandan citizen to know that they have the potential to make things happen. So the similarity mostly comes that we don't have the natural resources as well as most Singapore doesn't have the natural resources. Our economy will be based on the people. Our economy will be based on the service. Our economy will be based on investment. So this is the kind of idea and the comparison we're having all the time between Singapore and Rwanda from other people. But of course, the results are tangible now in Rwanda for everyone to see. Obviously, Rwanda is a clean country, like Singapore is clean. Everyone who comes to Rwanda who's been here will always think about that. We always say, yes, this obviously look like it. But yes, we get inspired by what Singapore does. We do learn a lot from what it does, despite the context being different. But we don't think that it's going to be completely that one. But yes, we learn and get inspired from what they do. And we think their journey would inspire what we do as well.
Now, Your Excellency, what's the trade relationship and the balance of trade between Rwanda and not only Singapore, but ASEAN as a whole?
Obviously, because we've had a very good relationship with Singapore, bilateral relationship with Singapore in ASEAN. So the trade the trade is much more significant in Singapore than other countries in ASEAN. So in Singapore, for example, Singapore is the seventh. If you look at the National Institute of Statistical Rwanda data on trade, export and import, is the seventh destination of export from Rwanda, seventh country where more export are destined. So, for example, the last quarter, Rwanda exported goods and services worth around $5 million US. This is quite significant if you're looking at the kind of the size of the export we do. Obviously, Singapore does also export to Rwanda, though the trade balance is still positive. It still do export more than what we import from Singapore. But the real amount of trade specifically happens with the services and the kind of technical cooperation we do have together. With other parts of ASEAN, we still have significant trade with Indonesia. We do import specifically a lot from Indonesia, with Malaysia as well, specifically in the manufacturing sector. But the significant trade relations are mostly with Singapore.
And who are the top investors from ASEAN in Rwanda? And what sort of industries have they invested in?
It is mostly, like I said, of course, it comes mostly from Singapore. It is mostly in ICT, in IT. We do have a very famous company here from Singapore, which is called Crimson Logic, which did invest in a digital platform for government services in Rwanda, which it's called Irembo, and it became really, really, really popular and powerful. It's being now sought after in other countries in Africa. Of course, there are also other investment in logistics sector. We're talking about Portec, which is a Singapore company which has invested in a dry port in the country. As well as we're discussing with other investors specifically in the agriculture sector. All the key, the big companies in ASEAN are in Rwanda. We're talking about Olam, we're talking about Wilmar, we're discussing with Wilmar and all these other companies. But mainly the existing investment is mostly in ICT and logistics.
And how would you characterize the state of diplomatic relations between Rwanda and Singapore?
It's very good. It is very good. We've had this high commission. We have a high commission in Singapore for more than a decade, and we've had pretty high profile visit. His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Rwanda, visited Singapore twice now, and we've had high-level visit from Singapore. The Deputy Prime Minister visited Rwanda. We've had many ministerial visits in Rwanda. We've signed many bilateral cooperation, I think around 20 now, in almost all the sector. Recently, we've signed the one in ICT. Both Ministry of ICT and Communication signed a memorandum of understanding for digital cooperation. We've also recently signed the one with what we call the Financial Trust Corridor. We have MOUs in all the sectors, in education as well. So it is a very good relation, which is based on mutual trust, and it's been good for such time.
Now, Your Excellency, the citizens of ASEAN really don't know a lot about Rwanda. What is Rwanda doing to promote itself? Because from a tourism perspective, you are doing quite a lot in terms of in Europe. You're sponsoring the likes of Arsenal and Paris Saint-Germain. But how about in ASEAN? Because you see obviously tourism as a big future contributor to your economy.
Well, you're right. So ASEAN, specifically mainstream media coverage, has been very minimal. In fact, I would like to take the opportunity and thank you so much for giving us this platform. I think your interview is one of the solutions for that, to make sure that Rwanda is well known in this part of the world. But well, it's clear that the trend in terms of, let's say, tourism, which is a part of the key sector we're trying to promote in this area, is important, and most tourists are coming from this part of the world. We're doing much by interesting mostly the people from ASEAN to visit Rwanda, and that's going to be through the kind of media coverage we're talking about. That's going to be through the exhibitions and conferences we take part to. We've been regularly taking part to what we call RACS Experience in Australia. We do have a number of exhibitions and shows and conferences in Malaysia, in Indonesia, and Singapore, and we're planning to do more. There, of course, a number of cooperation we are having with key attraction in this part, which are still discussed on and confidential, but we hope we are stepping up efforts to make sure Rwanda is well known as well, and the people of ASEAN also can visit Rwanda, and there's a lot of potential and good experience you could have in our country, in Rwanda.
Now, moving forward, what are the sectors of the economy that the Rwandan government is really looking for investment, particularly from Singapore? As you said, there has already been significant investments in Rwanda from Singapore, but obviously more can be done. If you've just mentioned in this interview itself, you want to then position yourself as a hub for finance. You want to then also grow your tourism business. What are the areas you think that you are looking to attract investment from this part of the world?
Obviously, I'll start with that one. Number one is that we're trying to tell to the investors, to the businesses in Singapore, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in all this part of ASEAN, that, well, Africa has a potential. It is clear, right? It does have the youngest population. Prior to COVID, all the countries in Africa were growing at a very fast pace. And it is a new area to go. We're trying to tell the investors that you can invest in Africa with your headquarters, with your base in Rwanda. So we are promoting Rwanda, first of all, as a hub for trade, as a hub for finance, specifically in African context. We're talking about, here you come in a country, of course, which does offer the incentives we talked about, which is incentives about cross-border transactions, incentives about setting up funds, setting up headquarters, easy to recruit, so, and all these environment we have. But we're also talking about what we offer as a stable, as efficient place to do business as Rwanda. That's number one. So that's the number one area we were telling, well, you have a country where you can use as a base, where you can use as a hub for your investment in Africa. That's number one. But number two, we're talking about Rwanda itself. It's also to look at Rwanda as a market of 13 million if you want to invest in Rwanda. But also you need to look beyond Rwanda, because we're a market of 13 million people, but within a larger market in the East African community. So key areas, number one would be ICT. There are ready projects such as what we call the Kigali Innovation City, which is being planned to be built. And it's going to be a place for research, development, and a place we give to startups and other innovators to be able to freely create these ideas. We know it's been successful everywhere in China, in Singapore, in Silicon Valley. So we're trying to create that in Rwanda. So this is a good place to invest as we see talents coming up. So, but apart from that specific project, but there are also more other projects in ICT because the uptake in terms of smartphone penetration is really high. We have the whole country covered by 4G. So there's tremendous potential to invest in ICT in Rwanda. There's also, like I said, potential to invest in tourism in Rwanda. The kind of tourism we're talking about here is what we call the high-end tourism. Prior to COVID, we've registered more tourists coming to the country, around 1 million per year. And remember, yes, we're talking about high-end, but also on the other part is about the MICE industry, hosting conferences, hosting events. So this sector does need investment as well. It needs investment in hotels, it needs investment in F&B places as well, and they are ready investment for that. Another key sector is agriculture. We're talking about that market of 13 million people, but also another more larger market of around 100 to 200 million people in East African community, and they all need food and so on. So investment in agriculture is key. So it's clear there are a number of incentives for those who are going to be in agriculture. And another key important, I think, which I will say is important, is it's the recent AfCFTA, Africa Continental Trade Agreement, which does offer more opportunity to invest in Africa, so and be able to do the cross-border trade within Africa itself. So it's a time to invest in Africa and take that opportunity to grow with Africa as it grows now in those areas. But these are just the three key areas I just talked about. But there are more and more areas we're telling investors to come to, specifically those in ASEAN.
Your Excellency, it's been a very informative conversation. What are your final thoughts that you would like to leave us before we conclude this interview?
First of all, I wanted to thank you so much for this interview. And I wanted to, once again, talk about Rwanda in this part of the world. I know, many of the people here around do not tend to know Africa. They tend to know Africa in what they see on Google, what they search and so on. But Africa has a lot to offer, has a lot of potential. Rwanda is a good, clean, stable, efficient country to try. I mean, we would want to welcome them. Rwanda is open for everyone who wants to try and see what we talk about. We would want to welcome you. You go there, visit it, and see what we're talking about and see the tremendous potential which is there. And obviously, if you want to know more about it, we're here. We have a High Commission in Singapore, but we can also service all these other people in the region, in Indonesia, in Australia, in New Zealand. But more or less, is that we'll be able to grow with you. And there are much similarities and that would help any business, any person, any businessman, any person who would come in our country. That similarities we have together, we will help you to be warmly welcomed in the countries, whatever you'll be doing. So thank you so much. Thank you for the interview, and I hope for everyone who watched this interview and who follow up and reach out to us.
Now, thank you very much, Your Excellency, for taking your time to be on the show. I'm Brian Fernandez, and I've been speaking to the Rwandan High Commissioner to Singapore, Dieu Uwihanganye, on Biztech's Ambassador Conversation Show. This video will be on our various social media platforms as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please like and subscribe to our various platforms. Thanks again for tuning in.